people like to eat squirrel out there, squirrel and possum, and a lot of deer. So I mostly ate a lot of deer. Like I don't think I had beef more than a few times. Well, I'm sure we don't have hamburgers, but when you had hamburgers, you would make deer hamburgers. And so I learned to like deer. At first, I didn't like it so much. We had someone cook us some deer once, and it was in a big old crock pot this big, and they cooked it for an hour and a half. Well, it's something you should be cooking like for 8 hours. And so we prayed, and we didn't get sick, thankfully. But it's actually really good. But I did try squirrel, and it was really more fun than anything. But squirrel gravy is something you gotta try. It's worth it. Probably fried chicken. I mean, people make it, and I ate a lot of biscuits and gravy. That's probably really the most favorite, is people would always make biscuits and gravy for breakfast or lunch or dinner. So, how important home teaching and visiting teaching are. Because in West Virginia, there's quite a few members, but there's a couple branches that I served in, and those branches, you'd have anywhere from 5 people show up at church on Sunday to 35, and sometimes they get higher than that. And then you look at the ward list though, and there's 200 other members that no one's even heard of in so long, and that even happens here in Utah. You come to find that we don't even know who these people are. But oftentimes we'd speak with like less active members who, say, "Oh, I'm not interested," or whatever it may be. And it all starts with, people just stopped coming. They just stopped visiting me. So I stopped going. And, in the moment you kind of think like, what are you thinking? But as you get to know these people and really come to love them and understand their whole story, you see that these, they needed that support. And that's why, you have the missionaries. But it goes so much further than that. We have home teaching, visiting teaching for a reason, not just to, make sure everyone's taken care of, but to really bond people and gain relationships and find those friends and family members that are supposed to be part of your life. And so I really just learned the importance of that, and seeing how just loving people is something that needs to happen. Besides how to talk to deer, because I tried to do that a lot. Didn't really work. Sometimes they would eat my apples. But I think, again, just back to the scriptures, is just really learning how to study and ponder them instead of just read and gain stories from them. Oftentimes our companionship studies would get pretty intense, just because it would just come to life in your studies and you'd want to act them out. So me and my companions sometimes would just, we'd be sharing what we learned, and we'd be jumping up on our desks or saying, and he did this, and so it was just fun to be so excited about that, about the scriptures. And I look back on that now and I'm like, gosh, I need to dance around for more people when I read the scriptures. But just, I don't know, the skill of appreciating something and just really kind of thinking. I used to lose focus a lot. The first couple months of my mission, I could not stare at the scriptures for more than 10 minutes because I would fall asleep, or I was, thinking about investigators. So I go, that's good, but I need to be thinking about what I can teach them instead. And so just really being able to kind of shut down and focus solely on what's most important. And so I think that's another skill or another thing that I learned, is that the gospel truly is the most important thing in our lives, and there are ways to incorporate it into every aspect of our lives. I love the scriptures, and especially my mission, you get to study them for an hour by yourself, and then with your companion for another hour, just studying the gospel. And so I learned to really love the scriptures, especially when we find other people who loved them. And once we were teaching a lesson to a member, he'd been baptized like 8 months prior, and so we were just having a good lesson with him and another member of the church. And so as we were teaching, we were sitting outside on their picnic table and just having a good old time. And this woman walks up to us, very, confident and walking quickly, and she said, "Are y'all Mormons?" I said, "We sure are." And she goes, "Oh, oh good, I am too. And she was so excited to find the Mormons. And so as we get to talk, she goes, can I join you? I want to study the Bible with you. And so she sits on down and she tells us her story. She's in her 40s and joined the church when she was a teenager, in her 20s, that period of time. She had had a few kids and lost them. Her name was Patty. And she had a few different mental disabilities, but she was so happy to find, the church. She says, I haven't found the church in 10, 15 years. And so we got her contact information, and we would start seeing her pretty frequently, and got her a new set of scriptures, and she would just read the scriptures for hours every day. We'd walk by, and she'd be sitting on her porch just reading the good word. And she loved it. She loved it so much. And she just was a great example to me in, you come away from something for so long, and then when you know something's good, you just embrace it and you go with it, and full-heartedly you just dive right in. And that's kind of what she did. And a lot of her friends, or the people she lived with, didn't appreciate the church and didn't think well of her for it. A lot of people didn't think well of her at all because they thought she was weird or this or that, or too tall. And she's beautiful in every way. And she's someone that I think of almost. I have a picture of her on my wall because I look at her every day. But she just really helped me to gain a better testimony of the joy that comes from reading the scriptures. There's Laura, and she was in my last area. She worked for the city as the emergency preparedness person, and the city manager was the stake president, and there was a couple other members of the church who worked for the city. It just was perfect. Everyone knew who we were, who the Mormons were, and they knew that they were really good people because of the stake president and his family. They had like 12 kids, and they all knew the Haas boys, and so it made things really nice. Like, oh, your preacher is the city manager. And we're like, yeah. And so anyways, Laura would always get her resources from the church websites to do her emergency preparedness stuff for the city and everything. And one day she realized one of her Facebook friends, who used to babysit for her, was Mormon. She was like, I didn't realize you were Mormon. Like, when did that happen? Oh, a couple years ago I got baptized. And so they get talking, and she was like, I want to know more. Like, tell me. Like, I love your resources. Like, you guys are doing something right. And so through that, this woman, Jerry, who's a member of the church, recently baptized, helped her set up with the missionaries. And it was the elders at that point. And then 2 weeks later is when we sisters moved in and the elders moved out. We just did a swap. And you just meet people all the time that that you knew before, that they're just family. And we got to teach her, and she just embraced everything we taught. She's like, yeah, I believe it. That's great. Yeah, of course. Yep, check, done. I know it's true. And she had to quit smoking, and that was something that was going to be hard for her, she thought. And so as we were teaching a lesson one day, we talked about the possibility of receiving a blessing. And so she asked for a blessing at work the next couple days, and from the stake president and Brother Brown, who also worked for the city, they pulled her into her office. And before that, though, it was the morning of. She had already told them she wanted one, and so she said, okay, I'm going to go outside, have one last smoke break. And as she walked outside, and as she said, as soon as she had a cigarette in her hand and was going to put it in her mouth, she got a text from Brother Brown that said, we're ready now. And they weren't supposed to do it for another hour or so. And so she just kind of looked at it and was like, well, and chucks it, and then goes, and she didn't pick up another cigarette since. And so it just was really emotional to hear her tell us of the experience of, feeling such a powerful blessing and feeling the Spirit so strongly, and then just seeing her just soar and become so strong, and to help lift her family. And she was baptized a couple months later, and it was beautiful to just be able to see her glow. I mean, I think that's just my favorite thing, is just seeing people partake in the gospel, like eat of the fruit, and they just shine. Oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. Going back to playing in the mud, me and my companion got the newest car in the Mission because we were in this backwoodsy area at the time, and so it was a Chevy Equinox 2000. I think it was the 2014 at the time, and so the car coordinator, Elder Crandall, he said, "Now take care of this." We will, yes, we will do it. And so as we were looking for this member on the ward roster that no one had heard about in years, and we felt prompted to go find him, we driving up there, and it had been raining and snowing recently, but it all melted away, which we forgot that when things melt, so does the road. And so we parked the car at the bottom of this holler, and we just started to walk because we're determined to find this man. And we didn't realize, like, our GPSs, you're supposed to have a GPS when you go to West Virginia, but half the time it just leads you astray, or it will lead you to someone that you need to teach the gospel to. So that's happened before. But long story short, we had been walking on this dirt road for probably like a mile and a half of just, we're covered in mud. We look horrendous. Definitely we don't look like servants of the Lord, just covered in gunk. But we finally get to the top of this mountain, and there's this family that just lives at the top of a mountain. And we show up at the door, and we're covered in mud. We're like, "Do you know where so-and-so lives?" Like, "Oh, he hasn't lived here in, however long it was," or if he does, he lives down the hill and across the other holler and across that rock, and you get to the top of the hill, and then you get there, and you're there. We're like, "Oh, okay." But the woman was nice enough to give us a ride home. She had a great big truck. They weren't particularly interested, but it was cool to see them, reach out and offer us a ride when so many people would just say, "Get walking, get off my lawn."